Right. So today, get ready to really dive into something big.
Yeah.
We're tackling consciousness.
Oh, wow.
And not just what is it
Mm-hmm.
in a vague, way,
Right.
but we're going to really try to grapple with this mind-blowing puzzle of subjective experience.
Okay.
That feeling of what it's like to be you experiencing the world.
And you've given us an incredible place to start for this deep dive.
Yeah.
A conversation between two intellectuals who are really going at it,
Yeah.
trying to unravel this hard problem of consciousness.
It's like we get a front row seat to them wrestling with the nature of reality, which is super cool.
It is.
But don't worry, we're going to break it down in a way that makes sense, even if you haven't spent years in a philosophy lecture hole.
That's right, because even though it might seem kind of heady,
Yeah.
understanding these different approaches to consciousness actually has huge implications.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It changes how we think about artificial intelligence,
Totally.
how we treat animals, even what happens to us when we die.
So let's get started with the core mystery here.
Okay.
We've got this inner world, right?
Right.
Thoughts, feelings, sensations.
Yeah.
But how do you explain that feeling of experiencing anything at all just by pointing to, neurons firing in the brain?
That is the million-dollar question.
I know, right?
And it's the one that has stumped philosophers and scientists for centuries.
Totally.
Your source uses a really great analogy,
Okay.
talking about a bat.
Oh, right. The bat. Yeah. I love that one.
Okay, so imagine you could describe a bat's brain down to the tiniest detail.
Okay.
Every neuron, every synapse, but how do you explain what it's like to actually be that bat?
Right.
Just using those physical facts.
It's like you're trying to understand a joke by analyzing the ink on the page. You're missing the humor, the feeling, the AHA moment.
Precisely. And that brings us to all these different ways that people have tried to tackle this hard problem.
Okay.
And the first one, and maybe the most intuitive for a lot of people, is materialism.
Okay.
And this is the idea that the mind is the brain.
Okay.
No more, no less.
So it's just these neurons firing.
Exactly.
Like a complex computer program.
Exactly. And this idea that the mind and the brain are the same thing, it's called the identity theory.
Okay.
It's like water and H2O.
I see, yeah.
Two ways of talking about the same thing.
Okay, I'm with you so far.
Okay.
Seems pretty straightforward.
Well, not so fast.
Oh, no.
Because there's a big wrinkle in this materialistic view.
Okay.
And it comes in the form of philosophical zombies.
Zombies. Okay, now things are getting interesting.
All right, so picture this.
Okay.
An exact copy of you walking around.
Okay.
Looks like you, talks like you,
Mm-hmm.
maybe even has your taste in podcasts.
Creepy.
But there's one crucial difference. This you has absolutely no inner experience.
So it's like a perfect imitation, but there's no you home.
Exactly.
That's kind of creepy.
It's meant to be unsettling.
Yeah.
Because it highlights this flaw in the materialist view.
Okay.
If consciousness is just brain activity, how could there be a version of you without it?
Right. It's like saying you have all the ingredients for a cake, but somehow it never becomes a cake.
Yes.
And this whole zombie thing gets even weirder when you start thinking about evolution, which I know you love. One of our listeners even asked this. If it's not essential for survival, why would we evolve consciousness in the first place?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
I know, right?
And there's no easy answer. I mean, some materialists would say that consciousness must provide some kind of evolutionary advantage. We just haven't figured out what it is yet.
But it makes you wonder, what if they're just looking in the wrong place? What if it isn't just some byproduct of a complex brain?
And that leads us down a very different path to a view that's sure to make you pause.
Which is?
Eliminativism.
Eliminativism. Okay, the name alone sounds pretty intense.
It is.
Yeah.
Because eliminativists take a very radical stance.
Okay.
They're saying consciousness is not just difficult to explain, it straight up doesn't exist.
Hold on, so you're telling me I'm not actually aware of, anything right now? The whole conversation, it's just an illusion?
Not quite. Eliminativists would argue that this way we have of talking about minds, it's outdated.
Okay.
Think about it. Thoughts don't have weight.
Right.
They don't take up space.
Uh-huh.
So how can they be physical states
Okay.
in the way that materialists claim?
I see. So it's like our current understanding is flawed.
Yeah.
We need a completely new framework even to talk about this.
Exactly.
I can get behind that. But what about feelings? Like pain hurts? You can't tell me that's not real?
So you've hit on a major counter-argument. how can something be an illusion if it feels so real?
Right.
And eliminativists would say, well, those feelings are real,
Okay.
but they're just brain states, not the subjective experiences that you think they are.
I see what they're getting at, but it still feels like they're like skipping a step.
Okay.
Just because our language might be imprecise doesn't mean the experience itself is an illusion.
Okay.
It's like sunrise is technically inaccurate, but the sun still appears to rise.
Yeah.
It doesn't make the experience any less real.
And that's why a lot of people find eliminativism to be a little too extreme.
Yeah.
Even if our language about the mind is flawed,
Right.
that doesn't mean that the experience itself is an illusion.
Right. So where does that leave us? So if materialism struggles with this hard problem and eliminativism feels too extreme, is there a middle ground?
There is, and it's a view that tries to bridge the gap between these two extremes.
Okay.
It's called non-reductive materialism.
Non-reductive materialism. Okay. I think I can kind of get behind that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's got materialism in the name, so it can't be that out there, right?
So it's a bit of a balancing act.
Okay.
Okay, so they agree that consciousness is real,
Uh-huh.
and it's distinct from just neurons firing,
Okay.
but they still say that it's a product of the brain somehow.
Okay, so which is it? Is it a product of the brain or is it totally separate? Like you can't kind of have it both ways.
Think about it like this. Fire and smoke.
Ugh.
These are different things, right? You can't have smoke without fire, but they're not the same thing.
Okay, yeah.
Right. The smoke kind of emerges from the fire,
Okay.
but it has its own properties that fire just doesn't.
I see where you're going.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you've got consciousness as like the smoke coming from the fire of brain activity.
Right, okay.
It's distinct, but still like dependent on that underlying process.
All right. And to make this like even more concrete, let's bring in another analogy, one that's especially relevant given
Yeah.
like your interest in physics.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
Let's talk about temperature.
It's temperature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a single proton doesn't have a temperature, right?
Right.
But you get enough of them together
Right.
interacting in a certain way,
Uh-huh.
and suddenly you can measure heat.
Yeah.
So it emerges
Yes.
from this collective behavior of all those particles.
And they're saying consciousness is similar.
Yeah,
Like, a single neuron isn't conscious,
right.
but put billions of them together in
Right.
this, like, crazy, intricate network of the human brain.
And you get something totally new
Mm.
and very complex subjective experience.
Yeah, that's the essence of the emergentist view,
Okay.
which kind of falls under this umbrella of non-reductive materialism.
I'm starting to see how this idea kind of bridges that gap,
Yeah.
but it still feels like there's a magic trick happening there.
Yeah.
You know, it's like going from neurons firing to like, I don't know, the feeling I get when I look up at the night sky, you know, that sense of awe. There's a leap happening there.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head.
And I'm not really grasping it.
That's, like, the main critique.
Yeah, of emergentism.
Okay.
That it describes a process, but not really the mechanism.
Right.
It's like we're saying, well, a cake emerges from these ingredients when you mix them together and bake them.
Right, but that doesn't really tell me WHY.
Yeah.
Those ingredients in that order, like, create that specific result.
Exactly.
There's a mystery still happening inside that oven.
And for some people, that lack of explanation is just, it's not satisfying enough. They want to know what's happening inside that oven, you know?
Yeah.
Like, how do these simple ingredients of matter actually give rise to the taste of chocolate?
Right.
Or the feeling of love?
Yes.
The experience of being you?
And that desire for that, like, deeper explanation for getting at the how of it all,
Yes.
that leads us to panpsychism.
Panpsychism. Okay, so this is where things get really interesting, I can already tell.
Yeah, this is where we really start going down the rabbit hole.
I'm ready. Especially given that you're so into, like, the interconnectedness of, well, everything. Because panpsychism takes a big leap, okay? What if consciousness isn't something that emerges from matter, but something that's, like, always been there?
Yeah.
Fundamental to the universe.
So instead of it just being brains, you're saying with panpsychism, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Even, like, atoms have a little bit of consciousness.
Yeah, like a little proto-consciousness even.
Okay, I gotta ask, why would anyone think this? It seems so strange.
Because it solves this problem that's plagued so many of these other views. Like, where does it come from?
Right.
If consciousness is fundamental, it doesn't just suddenly appear out of nowhere when matter gets complex enough.
Yeah.
It's always been there, just maybe in simpler forms.
So it's like it's an inherent property of the universe, like gravity.
Exactly.
Electromagnetism is just there.
Yeah. And, as things interact and become more complex, that consciousness combines and evolves into something more intricate, richer.
I see. And this is what's so interesting, especially for you, with AI.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
If consciousness is fundamental, does that mean that a complex network of computers, even if it's not biological,
Yeah,
could become conscious?
I know. Are we talking about conscious stars, conscious plants,
Right?
like a conscious universe? Is that even possible?
Those are the big questions that panpsychism really makes us deal with. It expands what we even mean by mind beyond just us.
Totally.
It makes us rethink what's possible.
Okay. Now that is truly mind-blowing.
Yeah.
I gotta imagine, though, that it's not easy explaining how all those little bits of consciousness
Right.
combine and interact to create something as, complex and nuanced as our own subjective experience. How do they explain that?
That's the challenge for them,
Yeah.
to develop a theory of how simple consciousness can become something as rich and amazing as ours.
It's like explaining how each individual pixel on a screen,
Yeah.
comes together to create this, like, amazing high-definition image.
Right, right.
But
yeah.
even with that challenge, I get why people like panpsychism so much, especially with how much it emphasizes interconnectedness. Like, it makes me think about our place in the cosmos in a whole new way.
It's a beautiful thought.
Yeah.
Speaking of wonder and really questioning the nature of reality,
Okay.
let's talk about another view that challenges our assumptions. Idealism.
Idealism. Idealism. Okay. I am, like, getting serious Matrix vibes from this one.
Yeah.
So panpsychism had us wondering about the nature of consciousness.
Right.
Is idealism going to tell us reality itself is an illusion?
Well, you're not far off.
Okay.
Idealism takes this idea of mind over matter to a whole new level.
Yeah.
Okay? So it says that the physical world, the one we experience with our senses, it isn't really what we think it is.
Okay.
So instead of a universe that's made of matter and then consciousness pops out of it somehow,
Yeah.
idealism, it flips the script.
Okay.
It says that consciousness, that's the real deal.
Uh-huh.
It's fundamental.
Okay.
And the material world, well, it's more like a projection of this universal mind.
Oh, okay. So we don't just have conscious rocks.
Yeah,
The rocks were never really rocks.
right.
And it's all, like, mind stuff all the way down.
Yeah, it's like we're all living in this shared dream.
I know. It's like, whoa.
And we haven't woken up yet.
That's a great